Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Krishna Pranamansa Paripajikacharya Stotra Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Now, one little piece more of work. Let me get rid of this double device thing. Okay, now we should be good. I think so. You can hear, right? Okay. And let's see if I can hear. I probably can. Okay. Om Gyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapata Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Puri Priye Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to all. Thank you for coming. And let's jump in and see what topics you would like to talk about today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry, done. I hear an echo. Did you ever touch upon your Varnashram system talk?
Did I ever touch upon the Varnashram system?
Yes, I believe that was going to be your next subject after the 4 regulative principles.
No, I don't think that was going to be my next subject. That's an endless subject. I think what we decided by popular demand of Kamalini Mataji and you, I think also, is that we would touch upon whatever people want to touch upon rather than theming the Istagosthi with, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that. The 4 rules one just demanded to be talked about, but I think we'll just take whatever questions come. Is that all right?
Yes, I apologize. I had asked because I had one question about the Varnashram system and I just wasn't sure if you had covered it.
No, that's welcome. Also, apart from questions, if you have something, some reflection or some thought or some, something that you experienced or thought about during the week, feel free to bring that up. It doesn't always have to be a question. Okay, let us hear your question, and then Tulsi Priya has one.
Thank you. Last time when you spoke on the Bhakti Center, I had asked about women's Dharma, and we never got to finish it because we only had 5 minutes left to the class. And I don't think there's anywhere specific that talks about this, and I know it's harder given that the true Varnashram system barely exists today, and just modern society, the culture makes it hard for it. But from just hearing and what I've read, it sounds like women is in their own separate category in the Varnashram. Though when I've had this debate,
you don't have to read Srimad Bhagavatam to find that out. Women are always in their own separate category.
But then when I brought that up, there are some who argue that, and this sounds like the Indian caste system, the Asuric Varnashram, but that the female takes the father's Varna, and then when she's married to the husband, she takes the husband's Varna. But that just sounds like, again, if you're born into a Brahmin family, then you're considered a Brahmin. But the argument is no, you must develop the qualities. And then I think we mentioned this, that females, no matter if you're married to a Brahmin man, husband, a Sudra man, the role is exactly the same. So it makes me think that women are their own separate category. Can you, I guess,
Women are definitely their own separate category. They've been their own separate category since time immemorial. That's the one thing that's sure. But you're asking about within the context of Varnashram. Yes, therefore, when Narad is describing to Yudhisthira the categories, he describes Brahmin, then Kshatriya, then Vaishya, then Shudra, then women as a separate category. So the women have their, they're different, and they have their own duties. Varna means occupational duties, their own occupation. We're looking at a society, by the way, where women were not truck drivers and nuclear physicists and so on. They were mothers, they were wives. So their duties were in that line, not that they were the breadwinners or the, in that line, but they assisted in the family affairs from their own, in their own way. So naturally, in a farm family, the woman would be engaged in farm activities. In a Brahminical family, she'd be engaged in Brahminical activities. In a business family, she'd be assisting in the business in some way, or at least in the background, supporting the business. So in that way, yes, woman is seen as an inspiration and as an assistant. So she assists, particularly the husband, in his duties, inspires and assists. So her duties are different. Yes, woman is a separate category, and you can read about that in Narada's discussion with Yudhisthira, what the duties of the woman are.
thank you. Just on this topic, though, because nowadays in modern society, women do work, and it sounds like now we understand that it's very hard to trace back in one sense your specific Varna, given that there's been mixing of Varnas. But can you confirm it? One cannot really straddle two Varnas. So even in today's society, a woman can she assist her husband and be the mother of the children and have her duties, but also straddle another Varna in the working world? That's the first one. And then
first of all, the working world is basically Shudra. Anyone who's working for a paycheck is basically Shudra by occupation. That's the first thing. Maybe a teacher, maybe in any occupation, but a person who's an employee is basically a Shudra. You may be an airplane pilot, or you may be an airline flight attendant, or you may be a ticket taker, or you may be the accountant for the airline, or whatever it is. But all of these occupations are basically Shudra. One is working for a paycheck. So that's the first thing, it's the Kalo Shudra Sambhava. By nature, practically speaking, by birth, everyone in this age starts off as Shudra. And most end up as Shudras also. There are very few who by samskarat, by purification, become Brahmins. Brahmins are pretty hard to find. Even people in Brahminical positions are mostly Shudras, who are occupying the Brahminical slot.
I remember in one of your earlier lectures, though, you had mentioned that even if a society is sick, you still have the natural, say, the intellects, the natural, say, leaders in management or government, and so on and so forth. So yes, even though a Sudra takes a paycheck, would you argue, and one person that comes to mind is, for example, Vice President Kamala Harris. She's a female, has children, is married, but she is now in a government role. So it sounds like she straddles the Kshatriya and the women category. is that possible? But she also gets a paycheck. So it doesn't seem as clear in modern society. And of course, I've heard the argument that it's just, there's a very specific definition. So there are no more Kshatriyas. There barely any definition.
That's what we see as Kali Yuga, that Shudras take the post of head of state. So you get Shudras as the head of state, you get women as the head of state, you get at best Vaishyas as the head of state, but you don't get Kshatriyas in this age, practically speaking, rare to find. So the first thing, let us not forget that the real thing is that the real ultimate duty is Krishna consciousness. This Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, this is just to support Krishna consciousness. Tapumbir Dvija Shreshta Varnashrama Vibhagasha Swanustitasya Dharmasya Sangsidhir Paritoshanam. The purpose is that everyone should be engaged in such a way as to satisfy Krishna. Dharma Swanustita Pumsam Vishvakshena Katasuya Notpadiye Dididatim Shramevi Kevalam. Even if one performs one's prescribed duties very nicely according to the Varnashram system, if one doesn't develop the eagerness to hear about Krishna, to become Krishna conscious, he's wasting his time, he or she. So this, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was discussing with Ramananda Roy, what's the, what should one do? And then the Ramananda Roy quoted Varnashram of Acharavata, Purushena Parapuman, Vishnu Radyate Panta, Nanyatato Chakaram. There's no other way to satisfy Lord Vishnu than to perform one's duties in Varnashram. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaya, this is just external. Tell me something more. This is external. So the Varnashram is meant to play a supportive role only. We shouldn't let it take over, that my real business is Varnashram. Then it becomes karma kandya, then it becomes mundane. Then we lose sight of what it's for. The Varnashram is just to support Krishna consciousness. From that point of view, Srila Prabhupada sort of wrote about Varnashram from two different points of view. Sometimes he says, Varnashram is impossible in this age, forget it, everything's too jumbled up, just become Krishna conscious. And Varnashram's external anyway. Sometimes he writes that to support Krishna consciousness, we must introduce Varnashram because people need practical engagements. The society needs to be organized for spiritual progress. That tended to be his approach, I'd say, in his later writings. In his earlier writings, it was the other way, that just Krishna consciousness. But both threads are there in Prabhupada's teachings. And in either one, the main thing is Krishna consciousness. If we don't develop Krishna consciousness, our Varnashram is a waste of time. So that we have to keep in the forefront. Then, all right, I need some occupation. I need to be engaged in one way or another way to maintain my life. So then, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, according to one's qualities and the way one works, these four divisions are given. And as far as possible, it can be organized. It won't be perfect. It won't even approach what it was supposed to be in previous ages. But still, it provides a useful organizing principle which can help us have a spiritually directed society. You need to have, just as you need arms, legs, a belly, a head. So the social body also needs legs, head, and so on. It needs all the parts in order to function nicely. So that these are sort of our starting points for Varnashram. Then we fill it in and we say, okay, this person engaged this way, this person engaged that way. But first thing we need to see is, well, why are we doing this? We're doing it to help in the real mission of human life, which is to develop Krishna consciousness. I've sort of rambled on a bit now. Do you want to ask further, or if someone else wanted to ask further? I saw some hands peeking up here, Tulsi Priya.
Oh, sorry. If I could just round out, this was really great. Thank you, Maharaj. And yes, the Varnashram is external and it's separate from bhakti. And truly, when I hear that too, I'm just reflecting. One can take on emergency Varnashram to fulfill whatever is asked to properly perform bhakti or serve Krishna, saying being called to. I guess on this one point, I was just thinking if you could just touch upon, well, yes, the Varnashram is separate. I just thinking even in today's society, if the woman's role is separate, and her role is very defined, if we look at, and I'm not sure if we can look at the deities or the celestials as even examples. They're more empowered beings, and but if you look at, for example, Durga, she has a role. It's almost not, I'm not saying she's working, but if you were to draw it to somehow parallel to us today, there are females in quote unquote working roles or having specific duties. Durga has a role with Maya, Saraswati with music and education, even well, I guess you can say Parvati, which is the female extension, which Durga comes from, while Parvati is serving Shiva. Again, there are females in specific roles. So that only begs the question, well, if these deities are examples for us and women aren't supposed to work, well, now you have these devatas who are in specific roles that they have duties outside of serving their husbands, like Parvati to Shiva. So can you comment on that, or what are your thoughts around that?
Would you like to be in charge of the universe? You could do that.
I wouldn't, nor would I ever be capable of. But my comment is that there are female devatas in specific roles, which you would say that the Varnashram system would say women aren't supposed to take. But if we look to the devatas as examples of how we should, I would say, live our lives, but they're also empowered beings, then how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, everybody has some, of course, they're powerful. These are all Shaktis of Krishna. These Devis actually is what they are. These Devis are all powerful, and they have their particular roles in the universe. I don't know that they're meant to serve as role models in every respect. They certainly weren't serving as flight attendants and ticket takers and CEOs and computer programmers and all of that. They had rather special engagements. They had special engagements. So the women can have, what would you say? It's of course a great topic, but the first, can't they also do this apart from serving their husband? Can't they also do this? First thing is, in the modern setup, practically speaking, women have lost the thread of how to be wives and how to be mothers to a large extent. They don't know how to be wives, and they don't know how to be mothers. They want to be something independent and something, to carve out their place in the world. And meanwhile, this wife and mother function is looked down upon. It's something, oh, you're still tied to that. It's like belongs to a previous era, and you're somehow or other being kept down, and you're so sad that you couldn't realize your full potential. and so on. This modern view is very much at odds with the extreme, extremely high regard with which women and wives were regarded, were seen. One of the things I do when I visit various places like Honolulu or Charlottesville, I'm looking for a good place to chant my rounds. And the best place, at least in those two locations, is the nearby graveyard. The Honolulu has quite a good one within a short walk from the temple, and Charlottesville, near the University of Virginia, has an excellent graveyard. You can associate there with the best minds in Charlottesville from the last few centuries. And you look at the tombstones and you see, Mary, somebody, beloved wife, beloved mother, and that was regarded as a great honor. It wasn't that they was, poor thing, she was just a housewife, but it was regarded as, yes, she was like the pillar of the family, that she was such a good wife, such a good mother. Now, that would be, to have that written on your tombstone would be like so, what should we say, demeaning. It would be so demeaning. But it's a great credit. It's a great credit to be an inspiration to the husband, to be an inspiration and companion to the husband, to be an excellent mother for good children. It was seen as excellent, and now it tends to be lost. And even the various arts and capabilities that women had in those roles as mother or as wife, or like, how do you do that? I don't know if I could do this. A woman doesn't, she's married, she doesn't know how to cook. Simple thing, like any Indian 12-year-old girl knows how to cook, but a modern American woman doesn't know exactly what you do in the kitchen except nuke something. There's quite an interesting, it's less interesting these days. Anyway, there was a blog that Urmila Dasi pointed me to, written by an Israeli woman who had been a very modern woman, very a real feminist and a free thinker and a sort of loose as a goose kind of young lady. And at some point, as a young woman, she realized, she got it. She realized that she was basically degrading herself, that she was being used, that she was wasting her life, and that she wasn't getting fulfillment for her life. And she realized that what she wanted was a husband and children and family. And she flipped. She turned from being loose and free to being very conservative, Orthodox Jewish woman who wanted to have a husband and children, which she eventually got. And I think she's taken it down from her blog these days. She's sort of gone on to other things. But in the earlier days, she had sort of an ongoing argument with her feminist counterparts who were saying, sweetheart, you've lost it. You've sold out, or you've given up, or you've you don't understand anymore, or somehow or other you've lost the path. And she would argue back to them with quite a bit of spirit, and she pointed out that, okay, you're able to work. What does that mean? That you can have your own career. It means that you have to pay for your transportation to work, which is always the biggest part of modern expenses in life. You have to pay for transportation. You have to pay for your work clothes. You have to pay more money to eat because you have to, eat outside on the job and so on. You have to pay for the various educational functions associated with your work. You have to pay taxes, you have to pay this, you have to pay that. And at the end, what do you have? You have enough money left to pay for childcare. Enough to pay for some other woman to take care of your kids. So what are you doing? That was her argument there, which I think has much to recommend it. Now, that said, in the modern setup, things are what they are, and we can say, well, just let everyone be Krishna conscious. Whatever, and Prabhupada often does say that, whatever you are, if you're a this, or you're a that, or you're that, or you're this, just add Krishna, just be Krishna conscious. Because our purpose is not to fit everyone into a rigid varnashram category, or to make sure that everyone's engaged according to the rules of varnashram. Our purpose is to see that everyone's Krishna conscious. So if you already have a career, you already have a this, you already have a that, just be Krishna conscious, and that will perfect your life. That's the most important thing.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Hare Krishna. All right, who's next? Yes, Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. I'm going to make my request for a topic first, and then I wanted to maybe add something, with your permission, to what Athena was asking about. My request is, a while back, a few years ago, you gave a seminar on Psych 108, which I really, really loved. And I was wondering if you would ever want to revisit the topic of mental health in Krishna consciousness, because my feeling is mental illness is sort of like any other illness in some ways. You can have mental illness that's like the flu or the common cold, which is, not very disruptive to one's life. And then you can have mental illness that's like cancer, and it can kill you. But I feel like it's a subject, and I think everybody has it to some degree or another, or most people. And I was wondering if
everyone in this material world is crazy.
Yeah.
Prabhupada said that. Everyone is crazy. Prabhupada told this story about a murder case in which the defendant pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. So the psychiatrist was called in, he examined the patient, and he, or the accused, and he reported to the judge, Your Honor, I've examined many people, and in my opinion, everyone is crazy. So you can excuse him if you wish. Anyone who's come to this material world is by definition mad.
Could I address something that Athena was asking about?
Sure. You have to ask your husband, then you can, if he lets you.
My dear husband, may I speak to Athena?
Please.
Okay. So when you were speaking, one issue that I've had, and I sort of resolved it in the course of hearing this whole conversation, is that when we talk about marriage in the Vedic system, there's the idea of anuloma and pratiloma. And so anuloma is when a man marries a woman from an equal caste or lower. And pratiloma, maybe I'm getting it backwards, pratiloma is when a man marries a woman from a higher caste, which is considered less desirable. And I was thinking, well, if a woman isn't a brahmana or a kshatriya, on her own, then why is this Anuloma and Pratiloma? And then it came to me during the course of this conversation you were having with Athena, is that the role of mother and wife is so important, that if she has the nature being brought up in a Kshatriya family or being brought up in a Brahmana family, if she has the nature of the Kshatriyas or the nature of the Brahmanas or the nature of the Vaishyas, that role in supporting the husband and in raising the children is so critical, because then she's in line with the husband, and it's able to perpetuate whatever values the family has properly. And so I remember once, you know, that author who wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, Stephen Pressfield. He's written a lot of good books, and he wrote he's written these historical novels about the Spartans in Greece, and I read one just to see what other kind of writing he did. And the way they describe the women in ancient Sparta, how fierce they were, and all they were doing was raising children to be Spartan warriors, you know, but they were completely different from any other kind of woman. You know, a Spartan woman was not your average village woman in a farm, you know, working on a farm. She was she had the Kshatriya nature, but her whole role was to raise children to become Spartan warriors and to support a Spartan husband and to hold the household together when the husband was at war. So I think what you're saying about the role of wife and mother being, you know, minimized and degraded is true, because when you see, and in the Bhagavatam and Mahabharata and Ramayana, these roles that women play, even though they're only supportive, they are so powerful, so powerful. And Ravindra Prabhu has been reading, actually now I don't remember if it's Ravindra Prabhu, we were reading about Rukmini writing to Krishna to come and, you know, rescue her and marry her. And I'm thinking, this is a young girl who's living behind palace walls, doesn't know anything about men, doesn't know anything about the world except what she hears through her family. And I mean, I know she's Rukmini Devi, but the idea is that this is a very sheltered person, only doing what is given to her and her family to do. And yet she's so bold. She's so bold that she goes after the Supreme Personality of Godhead for her husband with no, you know, she's been so protected, but at the same time, her nature has been so developed. And I think, you know, Athena was talking about using these, taking these personalities as examples. And I think we can't emulate them or imitate them exactly, but we can see that even somebody who's protected and sheltered and not out in the world can be a very bold and determined person and get what she wants and accomplish her goals. But those goals are within a certain range of behavior or a certain environment that is the most powerful for them. So those are my 2 cents.
Also, it appears the nature of a woman is she wants a man who's better. She doesn't want somebody that she's going to have to drag around through life. She wants someone who's superior. So from that point of view, this Anuloma, Pratiloma analysis is there. Not that a woman marries a guy that she has to like instruct and somehow or other kick to get him to do things. He should be the natural leader. Then she's happy. I got a guy who takes charge. Yes, Radhe, I see a hand there.
I was just hearing about Rukmini being so sheltered, and then I was thinking, my worldview, my ISKCON Krishna conscious view has changed a lot having a child who's 3 years old, and a lot of things come up about things like Disney movies or learning, like the books that we read. Just for a child to learn, there are so many educational books that aren't necessarily Krishna conscious, but they improve his vocabulary, they improve his ability to read Bhagavatam eventually. And I was reading just a couple days ago the pastime of Rishya Shringa and how sheltered he was under Mrigi, that when women came, he had never even heard of women. And Prabhupada writes in the purport how very easily he was susceptible to the desire for sense gratification that he had never experienced or never been taught. And I'm trying to find that line in my raising of Maruti in such a way that I'm not being fanatic, but at the same time I draw certain lines, or even innocent seeming movies or different things have sexual undertones and sort of strange things that kids don't necessarily need to see, and who knows how it affects them as they grow. And it might sound totally weird, but it's true. Some of these really innocent seeming movies that I was raised on, that all my contemporaries were, maybe there's an ISKCON in the future that doesn't see those things as normal, that sees kids totally insulated in a certain sense. But I'm just trying to find that line where it's fanatic and where it's practical. I don't know. I don't know where.
A great responsibility for parents. Before I forget about Rukmini, apart from being sheltered and so on, she was also savvy. So she, as the daughter of a Kshatriya, she knew that Krishna, here's when you can kidnap me. You're not going to want to see people killed in my family. So when the tradition is I go from the temple to, from my quarters to the temple, and that's when you can snatch me. So she had it down. And she's also savvy enough to know that I can send this, I better do something, so I'll send a message and I'll use a Brahmin because Brahmins are trustworthy. So she wasn't a dope. She was the daughter of a king after all. So she was sharp. She was sharp. Now, where to draw lines, of course, I confess that this is beyond my area of expertise. It's beyond my area of expertise. But I think, well, we should expose them to this because they're going to be exposed to X anyway, is crummy. It'll come on its own. And philosophically, they should know what's what. Not that, they have to participate in degradation in order to know what it is. That's not helpful. And and it's just, gosh, with video games and this and that and all the rubbish that insinuates itself into the young people's consciousness today. It's rough, but I don't think I should sit here and pronounce on how to raise kids. The last time I had to do anything to do with child raising, I was the child. Kamalini.
Radheya Prabhu, you said perhaps in the future there will be this kind of insulation. Really, you should say in the past. In the past, it was like that, and it's true. They're gonna get exposed later when they grow up, unfortunately. So when they're young, you have every right to keep them totally protected from that mundane vibration. And although now it's so rare, there are parents who do that. Like, look, in Mayapur, why do devotees move to Mayapur with young children? But specifically for that reason. And the thing is, you'll find there has to be you'll find some other parents who feel the same way you do, and you create a kind of sangha like that, where your child is only playing with children who are not exposed to this media, like you say, even like very innocent looking Walt Disney movies, like you say, they have a sexual undertone to them. In Hungary, Shivaram Swami, if you live outside of the compound, you're not allowed to attend the Gurukula there. So it's totally insulated, which you say, some people think that's like really archaic and not giving them the opportunity. They won't be able to function in the real world and all, but they will, as you can see. and there's so many, you know, I sell books, by the way, and there's so many Krishna conscious children's books. You can get a whole big library.
Please suggest a few to me privately. I would like that. And I guess the reason I brought this up also is because I'm in sort of a hybrid situation where my parents were those very insulated kids, and they have expressed to me a certain wild coolie stage that a lot of them went through leaving Gurukul, where they were those Rishya Shringas, and they, you know, were bewildered in one sense. And so I'm just trying to find that interesting line where I'm not being criticized as being fanatic, because I'm very much not. I'm trying to be very practical.
Yeah.
And so
and just, you know, while you have them, this is the time, you know, until they're like 6 years old, you totally have them, and so you can mold them, and these foundational years really make a difference.
But especially following the 4 regs, the 4 rules seminar, in which gambling is such an interesting topic, where I have, I wouldn't say no problem, but I have much less of an issue with it than in regards to with a child who wants to sport with this ball, that ball, or who wants to, you know, read something that may not be Krishna conscious, or who has, you know, in school you have a soccer team or this or that, and I'm trying to figure out where that line is for children, because for adults you can draw those no gambling lines, but for a kid they're gonna play with whatever.
Well, look at our Vrindavan Gurukula. I mean, they have the soccer champion, right, team. And I'm
curious what you would say about that, Maharaj. The Vrindavan Gurukul soccer and basketball teams. I don't know.
Again, I sort of resigned myself to the sidelines on this one.
Okay.
I have my biases. I have my thoughts about the matter, but I don't think I'm in a position to present myself as an expert on the subject, simply because I have no, you know, I feel like a backseat driver. I've never driven a car in my life, but I'm telling the driver how to do it.
really.
Okay, I'll resign the topic from this forum.
One thing, the reinforcing something Kamalini said, in your community, Urmila had a school some time back, and I remember it was controversial because her principle was, if you're watching television at home, you can't come to my school. And parents were objecting, and, you know, this is fanatical. And then she said, you know, I'm not saying that this is the way schools have to be, but this is my school and this is how I'm doing it. You know, if your kid is watching television at home, send them to another school. But in my school, if they're watching television, then they're not.
They're expelled.
Yeah, basically they're not meant to be here.
And you may say, well, how does she know?
Hold on 1 second. Let me dispose of this call. Okay.
Yeah, and like, well, how does she know? Well, she knows because naturally children talk about what's going on in their life, what they see and what they hear, and you know how they imitate. So
Sure.
they're going to imitate Krishna's pastimes, or they're going to imitate the superheroes that they're seeing. But that's young children. But even teenagers, when they came, I'm not kidding, but because my children went to her school for their education, and she'd say, you were watching television without them saying a word. And I said, how did you know? She said, you can just, you know, after teaching for so many years, you just see it, like the lack of Krishna consciousness in a teenager's face, and how it does, you know, incite these material desires. And then now it's like totally out of control, huh? And like you say, with all the games, electronic, everything electronic. Even now they have, you know, you've seen baby strollers now. They have a little iPod or something that hooks onto the baby stroller for like a 4, 5, 6-month-old baby, so they can be watching a movie while they're outside instead of seeing the trees and the fresh air. Not only that, they have a microscopic, a small little speaker that the pregnant mom inserts into her womb so that the baby can hear the music in the womb. So like total too much. They call it, rocking baby, to get the baby like right in the womb into like mundane sounds and all. And it just so much affects. And the main thing is one loses their taste, and it loses their taste for spiritual topics. And even children, then it is so addictive if they're watching, then they just want to watch more and more and more. And then you think, oh, well, I need a babysitter because I have to do something. I have to cook or take a shower. I can't be every minute. But then you think, all right, now they're peaceful for an hour watching this. Then when they get off, they're not peaceful. Then they're like crazy. And it pays off. Like it's an investment to have to like sacrifice. And then when they're grown up, you'll be happy that you did, because it will pay off. And believe me, there's enough exposure later on when they're out of your hands. When a child is like 16 years old or so, as you became a devotee yourself. Like you had a choice. You didn't have to when you were a teenager. You could go either.
That's thanks to Maharaj when I was 15, bus tour. And your son, Amal. Amal got me on bus tour, and then Maharaj preached to me.
Right. So that's the thing. Then you decided to become a devotee. You can't force anybody to be a devotee. But yeah, then there'll be that easier opportunity.
Thank you.
But,
For what it's worth, I'm on the strict side. The more I'm in favor of Gurukul. I hate co-education. Especially for the older students, I think it's cruel and unusual punishment. I'm all for the maximum of Krishna consciousness and the shunning of modern values as in education and bringing up children. And I've seen actually over the years that this attempt to sort of have kids who have it all, who are Krishna conscious and at the same time great successes in the material world, and they're at home with video games, and they're at home with sports, and they're at home with everything, and they're Krishna conscious and this and that. I've seen that for the most part, this turns out to be a pretty sad failure. It turns out to be a pretty sad failure. And rather, those who are strongly Krishna conscious, if they want to do something, they can do it. Because their senses are controlled, their minds are controlled, they're strong and purposeful. So if they want to do something in the material world, they can get it together and do it. Whereas those who are basically slaves of their senses can only serve their senses. There's a couple of comments in the chat box, which let us see. Tina, going back quite a way, says, in a true supported Varna system, the woman is the cornerstone of the family. As Maharaj said, the pillar, the foundation of the household is established by the woman. Yes. And thank you, Tulsi Priya. I also wanted to add that there have been studies done that support that children who grew up with a stay-at-home mother are more emotionally stable and have a stronger support system and foundation and can achieve much more in life. That's for sure. Your messed up families tend to mess up children. That's, the data is, as far as I understand, the data is in on that. It's not that children are simply unaffected by the serial marriages and divorces of their parents. It tears kids apart. I could go on about that a bit, but I don't think I need to, and time is short. Panchatattva says there's a growing group of women called, quote, traditional wives or #trade wife on social media who are living the old way of staying home, raising their kids, and letting their husbands take the lead. There's always a lot of back and forth between them and feminists. Yes. Venkatesh says, what if someone asks, where are those kids now who were raised in traditional style? How are they contributing to the society? I'm not sure whether that question means ISKCON kids or kids in general. I mean, we have whole histories, both in Krishna consciousness or even, American history of kids who were brought up in traditional style, so to speak, and who were, made huge contributions to society. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the.
Both the ways, Maharaj.
Both ways. Well, the Bhagavatam is full of people who were brought up in, traditional style, who made, Yudhisthira Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, practically everyone, it was the norm to be brought up in Vedic culture, and then they contributed things like, writing Chaitanya Charitamrita and, so many things. So the world has been full of the history of the world is full of great people who were raised according to what we call more traditional values. And I don't know that we've improved on the matter by having low lives in positions of leadership and responsibility. I think I'm glad that Kali didn't become the king and that Parikshit Maharaj drove him out. And in ISKCON also, we see young people who were brought up in strong Krishna conscious families and who are carrying on that tradition, whether they're in Indian families or Western families. There are such young people. And then there may be those also who, despite upbringings that were not the greatest, have become very good devotees. It's not that one has to have this upbringing. Devotional service can't be stopped by anything. So anyone from any background. But wouldn't you rather have the advantage of a Krishna conscious background? It's such a blessing and such a source of inspiration and strength. Tina says, Venkatesh Prabhu, Radhika Ramana, and Gopal Hari grew up in traditional style families, were homeschooled. Yeah, they are sort of our poster boys for contributing to society. If one is Krishna conscious, then one has perfected his or her life. This contributing to society, arguing that women who don't work and stay at home, what are they contributing to society? They're holding the society together in one sense, really.
Maharaj?
Yes.
Maharaj, a quick question. Isn't people who do not follow the regulative principles or the Vedas, they're kind of called the Milechas, Yavans, and Chandals, who do not anyway come under the Varnashram system?
Yes.
Because they're below the Varnashram system.
Yeah.
So I hear this word being said that color Shuddha Sambhava many times, but
Yes.
I mean, no one is actually a ideal Shudra also in the
Yeah, even Shudra you can't
Vedic
find.
term. Yeah, it's like Yovan, Chandal, and Milecha in
Yeah.
all the characteristics. So even the question of Varnashram is, even an ideal Shudra is very difficult in this age.
As they say, good help is hard to find. Even the Shudra is a rarity in this age. Yes, it's true. It's true. The
And yeah, one more thing I've generally seen is even many kids grow up well in a Krishna conscious background, but it's the teenage age when they're actually forced to go out seeking higher education and other opportunities, and that's where the major challenge is faced by most of the kids as well as families. So any comments on your side how
well,
that
time is
phase can
short.
be tackled, maybe having universities of devotees itself?
Time is short. I think higher education tends to be a misnomer. What one learns in the university is the sort of things that people deserve to be shot for. Um, every kind of degradation that one was unfamiliar with, one can pick up in modern university. And I was talking about this one time to some students from where's that place in west coast of India? I always forget the name of the place. University.
Pune? Pune?
No. South of Pune.
Suratkal?
Go.
Manipal?
Manipal. Thank you.
Oh, Mani.
I was speaking to some students at Manipal, and I was sort of running down the American university for its degradation, and they can't shot back and say, we have all this here. The same American style degradation has come very fast into Indian higher education also. Although I still suspect that the Americans are ahead, but anyway, Prabhupada called the educational institutions slaughterhouses, and I strongly agree with Prabhupada's assessment. Maybe I should leave it at that for lack of time to expand on the subject. Yes, because it's not only what you learn in terms of skills and knowledge, but what values you pick up, what behavior, I was at Oxford, the premier, by anyone's assessment, it's in the top 3 universities in the world. And you hear from my student friends what's going on there. The students are staying up to all hours of the night drinking, and then they get up for their first class at 11 o'clock in the morning. And they're brilliant students or what have you. But in terms of control of the mind, control of the senses, cleanliness, discipline, they're not out of animal life. They're not out of animal life, and that's Oxford. That's like a premier institution. We talked about some other statistical anomalies found in higher education during our 4 Rules seminar. In short, real education means control of the mind, control of the senses, and spiritual advancement, spiritual understanding. That's real progress. The other thing is something else. It's a program for wasting the human life on a grand level, with lots of letters after your name and a big salary. I think we have to stop there. this educational topic. Again, maybe sometime if you'd like, we can invite someone who's really focused on these issues and they could talk with us. For me, it's a little bit of a side, or theoretical, let's say, not a side concern, but it's something I can only speak about from a theoretical platform, even if I have strong opinions about it or a strong sense of it. But there are devotees, Kamalanis among them, who have experience in bringing up children and have more of a right to speak than I do. But in conclusion, the Varnashram system, education, everything is meant to bring us to this point of Krishna consciousness and getting free from this cycle of birth and death, going back home, back to God. Well,
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shimon. We are at 8 o'clock plus a few minutes. So I think we can end here. My thanks to you all for your lively questions and contributions and your company. Thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare,
Thank you.
So much,
Hare
Maharaj.
thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Meena.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you, Lakshmana. Muchas gracias. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.